genre.
Hello, members of my Twitter block list. Welcome to Beyond Geek by Night, where we will be discussing each episode of the Geek by Night podcast leading up to the series finale. On today's episode, we will be discussing the fourth story arc, Under the Bridge. So put back your Orphan Black comics, say the password to the secret lair behind the arcade, and record a poorly lit personal takedown for your YouTube channel. Because we're about to go Beyond Geek by Night. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. I'm joined today by creator and executive producer Scott Carelli.
Hello again, everyone.
Composer of Geek by Night and voice of Max Carmichael, Scott Tofte.
Hello there.
Voice of Jeff Gibson, Chris O'Connor.
Hi.
And voice of the Ire, Mark Allen Jr.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. Just to recap, in this story arc, Under the Bridge, comprising episodes 13 through 16, Gibson acts like a total dick to Underdog Comics customer Amanda. Feeling self-righteous and angry, he runs into the Ire and is introduced to his cabal of angry, disenfranchised neckbeards, the Devil's Advocates. Amanda makes a YouTube video to criticize Gibson's behavior toward her. The Underdogs plan an event to make up for that incident. Max Carmichael unsurprisingly crashes the event, and the Ire attempts to use Jeff to attack Underdog Comics. Thankfully, Gibson experiences a change of heart, and with the help from Victor, neutralizes the threat. Accepted back into his group of friends, Gibson apologizes to Amanda and reevaluates his toxic tendencies. Elsewhere, the Ire and the mysterious woman discuss the failure of their joint plan and begin to hatch a new one. Bum, bum, bum.
This brings back so many memories.
So many sinister eggs.
Oh, this is one of my favorite episodes. I'm really excited to talk about this one.
I went back and listened to a little bit of it just to bone up because it's been quite a while. So I'm excited to also hear about it and remember it. I don't remember how it ends. It's great.
Yeah, do I die? I don't remember.
Yeah, I've listened to part 1, 2, and 3, and then I remember most of what happens at the end. But I haven't actually listened to the last bit of
Matt,
it in a while.
we get to ask you questions, right? That's how this is happening.
Yes.
You get to remind us what happens.
You don't talk much, yes.
I dodge a bullet. Yeah.
Something I like to start out with when I'm talking to somebody who hasn't been on Beyond Geek by Night yet is asking about how you got involved with the show. What was your history? Were you involved with the original show? And, what was your audition process and so forth? So I figured since this episode is about Gibson, we would start with Chris. How did you get involved with Geek by Night? What's your history?
Can you remember that far back?
I do. I'm far older than I was, but not so old that I can't remember. I had been doing Buffy Between the Lines, and I think that was the only podcasting and audio drama stuff I'd done. But that sort of group, Scott infiltrated them and put out the request for auditions and put out some lines. I was like, yeah, I'll read. Shut up.
It's funny because there's two Scotts.
Pipe down, other Scott.
Scott 2.
You've been relegated to other Scott now.
Nega Scott. Anyway, so they put out the auditions, and I was like, oh, that could be fun. And so I recorded some lines and sent them in, and there we go. And that was 2006, 7?
Oh,
8?
yeah, I guess it was. Yeah, 6 or 7. It ended in 8. So, yeah, 6 or 7.
What about you, Tofte? Because you also you compose for the show as well, so you've got a lot of involvement.
Oh my God, you have no idea how much I've done for this show. Wow, that sounded super cocky, and I apologize. I did not intend it to.
I am nodding my head vigorously.
So I think I talked about this in one of we did like these between episode interview things when the new series first aired, and I talked about this a little bit.
We did.
I found out about Buffy Between the Lines, I think I don't know, I feel like it was like LiveJournal. I don't know. It was a long time ago. Tumblr? Who knows?
That was a time.
And
I don't know if Tumblr even existed in 2000.
Probably not.
MySpace? Friendster?
That might have been. It might have been MySpace. But I was like, I'm living in the North Country of New York, in the red area of the state where I have nobody that I can talk to that's my own age. Let's do a podcast. So I sent in auditions. I got cast as like some side vampire in that, and then the person who was casting and running Buffy Between the Lines told me about this other show that needed a character, like their actor had left and they were kind of in a pinch. Would I want to try out? And I was like, okay, cool. So I did. It was Geek by Night. And I think it was like the 3rd or 4th episode in where Max showed up as a character. So did that, loved that, had a super blast doing it, spent a year trying to be as good as Chris O'Connor. And then I know. And then the show went away. And then at one point, Carelli messaged me. He was like, hey, I'm thinking of making this comic book. And I was like, I can draw. He's like, cool, draw pages. So I drew 5. And that went away. Because
you're a busy guy, Tofte.
I don't finish things. I'm very slow. That went away. And then word happened that this was going on. He wanted to do a revival. And he's like, I want to do it right. Will you compose music for it? And I was like, hell yeah. So in addition to doing Max again for this and spending another year trying to be as good as Chris O'Connor, I got to flex my compositional chops and did my best version of The Princess Bride.
Had you composed for anything before? I mean, yeah.
I mean, I hadn't scored anything. No. Up until this, I mean, I'm a songwriter, so I've written a lot of songs. I always have riffs and melodies on guitar. I came up as a musician through like the high school band, and then ended up going to college for music ed, was a percussion major. So it was like playing 4-mallet marimba and learning piano and doing composition and that stuff. But I hadn't done anything set to a scene. So it was really, really hard in the beginning. And you can actually hear in the first episode, the music sounds one very certain way. It's a lot of guitars, a lot of more sort of like rock type stuff. And then by like the second episode, Carelli was like, yeah, that's not really what I think I want. So we sort of just shifted the tone of the composition.
Well, that's actually different from, because that was the we shifted from that, but that was already the second version. Because the first version you did was more like sitcom-y, where
the transitions, yeah, I did all these. That's right. I forgot all those like between scene transitions.
Seinfeld bass.
Corelli did not like those.
Scrambled eggs.
I changed those. I was thinking more of the play the game theme and the best friends theme with Gibson and Elliot. So that stuff was all guitar based. And then I just ended up composing everything in Logic on my computer and trying to do a more orchestral kind of thing. It's still very like percussion influenced. There's a lot of xylophone in there. I tried my damnedest to establish like character themes that varied throughout the course of the show and that like sort of looped into other pieces. Like you can hear Lorelai's theme in a lot of stuff. You can hear Max's theme in a ton of stuff. Yeah, so it was fun. I hadn't done it before. It was a super fun time. And now, because I've done that, I do all these podcast themes for like Movies by Minute podcasts for Scott's podcasts.
How many of those have you done now?
I have a lot. It's on my website, scotttofte.com.
Yeah, it's honestly his score, Tofte's score is like a godsend because, you know, in the original version of the show, there was no score. And so I had to try and think of some kind of sound for every power, and it never really made any sense most of the time. It was just like, yeah, we're just going to associate this sound with this power. I don't know how else to do this. And then Tofte came up with the powers theme, and I'm like, oh, I can just play that every time somebody uses their power now. And everyone knows what's happening. It's amazing. Oh, something weird is happening. Oh,
that's the other secret weapon. Other secret weapon in that score is the celeste. That little toy piano sound is all over that score.
Yeah.
I swear that sound, that little sort of toy piano, kind of makes me think of those old like 90s LucasArts games.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. I'll take it. Let's see. Wait a minute. LucasArts, John Williams. You sound like John Williams. Yes, I'll take that.
Yeah, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis.
Yes.
Yeah,
Day
that's
of the
what I
Tentacle. Yeah, Sam and Max hit the road.
There you go.
So I'm definitely going to have more questions about music later. But next I want to go to Mark and ask you, how did you get involved with Geek by Night?
Well, I've been voice acting for a while, and I think I missed the first round for this particular show. But my friend Natalie Van Sistine actually was, I believe, part of that original run. or maybe not. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't think she was. I think she was later because she didn't get cast in a part until after you, actually.
Which is weird because I found out about the audition for the Ire through her. She had shared it on Facebook, and so that was how I ended up finding out about it and sent in an audition. And Scott was like, "Yeah." It was a pretty harmless process for me. But at the time, I had been lamenting over the ups and downs of the voiceover career in LA, and it came at a time when I was like, okay, I think I'm going to start doing radio plays again, because that's actually where I got my start. Was in radio plays and audio dramas back in 2006, 2007. So it was a time when I was really upset with where my career was and needed something that was going to fulfill me creatively. I speak for a living. And no,
we all do.
No, I don't.
But it was really nice. It came at a perfect time, and the Ire is such a character. Like there's so much aggression that you can channel into a character like that you regularly don't get in most acting opportunities. So yeah, it was really nice to return to radio plays and have the kind of freedom that allows.
So had you played anybody like the Ire before? Because he is a lot.
Not like the Ire, no. The Ire is the first character I've played who is basically rage incarnate. He's very similar to a character that I played for a television series that was claymated, that never saw the light of day in the U.S., but was in like 19 countries worldwide, and nobody has ever heard of it, which is amazing. But I played a character named Motor, who is a genius paraplegic creator who's 13 years old. And when I was actually recast into that role and decided the first session that I went in to record for that role that, all of the sample lines that I'd been given, everything that I had looked at before, he was very monotonous and very one tone and sort of that stereotypical I'm a nerd genius character. And I decided that there were a couple of moments in a script that we were working where he was supposed to get angry. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And if it's too much, they'll tell me to dial it back. And so I just went off. I mean, just screamed at the top of my lungs, just went way overboard. And they liked it so much that they changed the character so that he regularly has these ridiculous meltdowns. So the majority of episodes down the line after those first few that we recorded, they would try and fit in some moment for him to scream at his best friend. And that was sort of, I took a little bit of that and channeled that into the Ire, but it's like the Ire all the time is cranked up to 11. So I think that's maybe the closest character I had to it, but definitely nothing like the Ire before him. I mean, it's so freeing to be so horrible all the time.
Yeah, because he's really representative of a big population of people. He's kind of a lot of different characteristics that are pretty abhorrent rolled into one.
Yeah, all the worst parts of nerd culture. And, growing up as a quote-unquote millennial, which I hate, but, terms are terms. But growing up as a millennial and coming to age at the time that the internet became the primary source of communication about, in particular, nerd culture, you just see so much of that. And so it's fun to kind of hone in on all those things that regularly make me upset as a human being in nerd culture and make that part of the character and really kind of take all of those, the darker sides of pop culture and channel that into a character. There's a lot of lines that these guys have written into the script that I swear I've seen on Twitter and Tumblr. And it's, there's been a couple of times where I'm just like, wait a minute, why does this sound so familiar? Oh, I know why. I raged about this like 3 years ago. Cool. Awesome.
We call that our dark research.
Well, because it's in no way dated. I mean, this episode came out before, Last Jedi and Captain Marvel and Last of Us 2 and, all these, the controversy of the week and all of that. And
it's all the same arguments. It's always the same.
It's the same thing.
I think we had a line in there about like the all-female Ghostbusters movie, which, to be fair, was a bad movie because it was a bad movie, not because it had an all-female cast. But it was like, you have that same line, and that could have happened in 95, that could have happened in 2002, that could have happened in 2008. Like, we have those arguments all the time. So it really is a timeless sort of horrible underbelly of nerd culture that he represents.
Scott, what was going on when you conceived this episode? What was kind of the controversy at the time?
Sorry, clues, Chris. We know who he's talking to.
Right. Scott Prime.
I was trying to think of that while Mark was talking, and I can't remember the specific thing that inspired this. I just remember being, I think it was episode 7. I'm pretty sure it was like the Rey stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Prior to even The Last Jedi. Like, I think it was Force Awakens, I think is the main driving force behind my frustration that was coming out in these people. It was a little bit of that, and it was a little bit of like, Ms. Marvel was happening and Miles Morales was happening in comics. They were like kind of newish characters at that point. And people were claiming forced diversity and were saying that they're going to ruin Marvel and et cetera, et cetera.
Disney's out to get us.
Yeah,
go broke,
a lot of that.
Garbage.
And so it was like just the start of that. I think it was the combination of Force Awakens and the Ghostbusters reboot were like the two things that were on my mind when we were writing that, I think. But there's been so many air quote controversies since then that I literally cannot remember, because it could just be any of them, which actually makes me happy that the script is still relevant, but also makes me sad that the script is still relevant.
It's evergreen.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's something that I honed in on while, again, I haven't quite finished it, but in the third part that we just released, it's not just nerd culture, it's the internet culture itself. Like the bit where he talks about how his troll farm was used to, it's like, oh yeah, we made Avatar like this big cultural phenomenon by sort of generating like first like the part of the conversation that says, oh, this is so important to me and this means so much, and then also the people that are getting angry at those people and telling them to kill themselves. It's like we play both sides against the middle, and then eventually a natural conversation comes up out of the fire that we started. And it's really interesting that is exactly how politics on Twitter is, and how, without going an entirely unnecessary direction with this commentary show, let's just say the ire would
save
be
the commentary for later.
The ire would have been heavily involved in politics over the last couple of years.
No,
By
most
the way,
definitely. Like especially
right
with
the
all
nose.
the talk about like Russian troll accounts and all that.
Exactly.
That's
It's a
the
troll
ire
farm.
all over.
He has a troll farm. He's like, welcome to my troll farm. Let me show you it.
Carelli, I also appreciate the subtlety in the naming of characters in this episode.
Actually, Dan, whose name is Chris.
Actually, Dan is one of my favorite characters. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So, Chris, I want to talk about Gibson, because this is, each story arc kind of has a focus on one character, but this one is pretty tough on Gibson, honestly. Like he goes through a lot and he has a big arc, but he's kind of a dick a couple times. What do you think about that? What was it like reading the script, having gotten to know this character and then seeing him sort of this I guess not necessarily new light, but learning more about him.
Yeah, but that's a light that was there with him, and that makes sense, and that's there with a lot of us. That's there with a lot of people. Everybody has their good moments, their bad moments, but somebody is more than the worst thing they've ever done. I mean, not that saying the things that he says are conceivably the worst thing that Jeffrey Gibson has ever done, but it's just a part of being a whole character. I could, it was fun. It was fun to say. It was fun to do all that stuff, to be like, to be the thing that everybody's like bouncing off of. Cause it's there in like every episode where he's, sort of a clueless, jerk. And he gets to say, little needling things, and most of the time the rest of the characters sort of let it roll off. And then in this one, it all kind of blows up, and it's like, you need to stop doing this thing that you've always done, this thing where we're like, okay, Jay of Jay and Silent Bob, it's really funny that you say all these things all the time, but not really. You should grow up and quit being such a dick. And but it's good. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was always in the cards. This was one of the first episodes that I conceived of when I pitched bringing the show back to Nick. I told him about the kinds of episodes we could do, and I think of the kinds of episodes that we could do, this is the only one that actually went from me pitching to him to becoming an actual episode. And one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that we got right with this, and it's the reason this was one of the scripts that took the longest to write this season, and it definitely held up production this episode. And it was because I basically had to do a page one rewrite because it was there, the story was there, but it wasn't going hard enough. And I felt that, we don't have a network looking over our shoulder and saying, you have to make sure those characters are likable all the time or no one's going to watch the show. And I was like, we have the benefit of controlling all of this. And so if we're going to, let's have this character actually say what he would really say if this is what this story is about. And let's go all the way with this and not pull our punches. And so I wanted to really show that no, Gibson's an asshole. Just full stop. The guy's an asshole and he needs to grow up. His
line to Gwen at the beginning, you have boobs and you like them too, so you're checking two boxes. That's really rough.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
But yeah,
that was pretty bad.
I've heard people say stuff like that. It's not crazy. It's not out there. It's just right. It's disappointing to see in one of your friends.
Right, and that's the thing is that's what I wanted this to be about. Is about having that relationship with someone who is like that. And trying to come to terms with do I want to be friends with this person anymore? Is that, or do I just want to cut my losses and just, set them aside and just pretend they don't exist anymore?
Done that a few times.
Right. I mean, I think we all have. And so I really wanted this episode to explore that from both the perspective of the friends dealing with his bullshit and the guy responsible for the bullshit. And really wanted him to figure all of this out. And ultimately what this episode to me is about is empathy and learning empathy and learning the value of empathy, and why we all need to learn that and focus on it and make sure that we're not, making people uncomfortable, not because it's you just don't want to feel uncomfortable, you stupid snowflake. It's no, I mean, just don't make people uncomfortable because it's mean. Don't be a dick. And that's sort of where I was trying to come at this from, was just really making sure that we didn't pull our punches with Gibson and really put him through the ringer as a result of what he did.
Yeah, not for nothing, but the world could use a lot more empathy right now.
Yeah.
Bah.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it really comes together at the end when Gibson is apologizing to Amanda and he says, I'm scared. I'm very protective of these things that make me feel safe and happy, and they're changing without me. And, that I'm acting on that fear. And that's really, it's tough to admit, but it's relatable. And that self-awareness that Gibson comes to at the end, I think is that empathy that is tough to apply to this.
Yeah.
You see the vitriol.
As trite as it is, that fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate. It happens every once in a while, but very rarely do a lot of the angry, hateful, shouting people on the internet, admit that there are things that they're afraid of. And, that's a big character moment. That's when somebody does do that for you, and that has happened a couple of times in my life, where somebody who has been in some way mean or arguably awful has fessed up to the fact that they reacted the way they did, and that they treated others the way they did because they're afraid and they didn't know what to do, and they lashed out. And I mean, yeah, that's a big thing. Most people don't fess up to that.
Yeah, it's a very real moment that we don't see very often, especially in media, because everyone wants to have their happy ending, or everyone wants to kind of gloss over all the darkest parts, and it's an important part of life, and I think it's a moment that makes the show so much more real, in seeing that sort of evolution of Gibson coming to terms with the fact that he's upset because he's losing control, and like he doesn't know how to process that, and so it comes out as, you know, just being a dick all the time. Yeah. We don't see that perspective very often, so it's as just as a viewer, it's been refreshing to see that sort of experience from both perspectives, because so often you're the one who's wronged, or you're the one who's doing the wronging, and it's very infrequent that you see both sides of an issue and both sides of an argument. So
yeah, it was really important to me to empathize with both sides of what was happening here, and that's not to say like, you know, there are heroes on both sides. Like one of them is clearly in the wrong, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that one of these people is clearly in the wrong. But I wanted to make people understand, because empathizing isn't the same as being like, well, so they're okay then. It's like, no, you're understanding where they're coming from, but you're still recognizing that they're wrong. And I wanted to make sure that we didn't just, you know, I don't know, play this for a laugh and let I don't know, bygones be bygones or what have you. But I wanted to make sure that we understood where Gibson was coming from, and that took a lot of Nick and I just like back and forth, like trying to figure out like, where do we think all of this stuff is coming from? You know, like, where is this stemming from? Like how can we empathize with these people? And luckily we love Gibson as a character so much that, you know, he allows us to want to empathize with that perspective, at least to a certain extent. Whereas like, I don't really care what the hell the Iron's going through.
Well, it's a great foil because they're kind of the same person at the beginning of everything. And by the end, you realize, no, while the Ire has absolutely no redeeming qualities, there is something in Gibson that is propelling him forward to be a functioning, decent human being. And I think the responsibility is kind of a big part of that too. I could be wrong. I'm not the writer, but that's what I took away from it, is that his both the responsibility to the comic book shop and his group of friends, as well as, you know, the things that are starting to happen in their life, and that's something that the Ire doesn't have. He doesn't really have anything to work forward to other than his own ambitions. So he doesn't have anything to keep him grounded, unlike Gibson.
Right. There's no moral line there.
Right.
Because the Ire even he even says near the end of the episode, like, I want a world where we can do or say what we want without repercussions.
Right.
You know, he doesn't have anyone to answer to, and what I like about the end of the episode with Gibson is that it's okay for there to be repercussions. Like, it's okay to say, you know what I'm doing is hurting people that I care about, so I'm not going to do it. You know, it's easy to do, and it's my gut reaction, but I'm not going to do it anymore. And it's nice to see that difference in the two of them, even though you're right, Mark, they really were on the same page for most of the episode.
And I just really like, in terms of, you know, talking about the different ways that the characters operate in this episode, I also just like that Max is like the opposite of the Ire, in that like he's bad, but he has no idea why he's bad or what he's really even saying most of the time.
He doesn't have a goal.
Yeah, there's no goal. He just
gonna make more money selling comics.
He's just saying awful things and constantly putting his foot in his mouth, because what he's saying isn't actually what he's meaning, and it's I love him to death. He's the best.
It feels kind of like Max is living in the future and the Ire's living in the moment. I think that's like a good defining difference between the two of them, because Max knows what he wants. He's not sure how to get there, but he knows what he wants. The Ire kind of knows what he wants, but he's so focused on what's going on right now that he can't make a long-term plan with any sort of, you know, feasible outcome that would be what he wants.
Right.
I mean, he got Avatar nominated for Best Picture,
that is
so
true.
that does speak to some ability to plan.
That was the end of his plan. Everything after that, he
probably had an undue effect on the 2016 election.
Avatar?
Yes, Avatar. Avatar is the biggest factor. In
But her Navi. Anyway. Anyway.
So, Tofte, I gotta talk about Max.
Okay.
He is a lot of people's favorite character. He is just
He's
just
my
larger
favorite.
than life.
Aww.
And you don't talk like Max. You're
Acting.
what I'm getting at is like, how did you build this character? Like, what are you thinking
Oh,
about?
man.
Or,
I wish to God I had like some deep philosophical answer for this, but I literally read the lines on the page and I'm like, oh, he sounds like a Hanna-Barbera villain. So we're going to make him a Hanna-Barbera villain.
Very true.
I'm not an actor. I did Buffy Between the Lines because I wanted to try something new, and then I got this. I'm like, holy crap! I guess
If you act, you're an actor.
A prominent role on a show. That's weird. It's like one of those things when you're a kid, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a spaceman. I'm going to be president. I'm going to be a voice actor. And okay, still the only voice acting I've ever done. But I didn't really sit down and analyze Max. I just kind of, when I'd read the script, it sort of resonated with me that here's a dude that just wants all the toys. Like literally all he wants is all the toys, and he wants to show them off and say, look, I've got all the toys. And he's just never like aware enough of what is going on in the world to like it. I don't know. It's he's just dumb. He's just a dumb guy who wants all the toys, and he has a big deep voice, and he's maybe a little ambiguous as to certain leanings is kind of how I always played him in my head.
I'm just glad he's not that malicious, because
No, and
considering his power, the things he could do if he had an ounce more ambition and a little, I'm not entirely sure what to say about what he would need, but his power could be very awful. But he's fortunately just kind of a doofus.
He's so dumb that he has the greatest power, perhaps out of all the underdogs, and he just wants all the toys. That's literally it. That's what makes him happy.
He's like,
and he wants
around,
to buy them fair and square, even if it is only for $1.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he's like walking around Comic-Con with like the Red Rider wagon, and he's just filling it up with statues.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only other thing I can really, from a character study standpoint, is back in the first show, all those ages ago in the before times, I always looked at Max as like desperately needing Billy. Like that was like his security blanket, is the approval of this one other guy. And I don't think we ever finished the first show, but I always did get inklings that Billy was more than he was let on to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of nice to see that.
'Cause he always was.
I know, but I didn't know.
Well, we did write the script where that reveal happened, and it was sent out, and then the show was canceled shortly after that because my computer went kaput and we lost.
That's right.
like 3
Everything.
episodes of recordings,
Including one that Chris wrote, I think.
Yeah. Chris wrote a 2-parter.
It's awesome.
And it was really fun. Yeah,
And it'll
Is it
never
called
see the
Rain
light
Hard?
of the day.
yeah, it was rain,
Yeah.
rain hard and rain harder. Yeah,
Yeah.
those were good episodes. I love Max. I think that he's a really fun character to write, and there was never. I mean, I think what he does is weirdly ground the show in that it's like he's the constant reminder that this is a comedy. Like,
Yeah.
first and foremost, this show needs to be a comedy. And so there's a lot of dramatic stuff that happens, but first and foremost, like, this needs to be a comedy. And Max allows us to remember that every once in a while because he can't help but be a doofus. But he's a lovable doofus. And, he's not evil. He's just like, it's like
It's
a kid.
just how I'm drawn.
It's like a kid. It's like a kid made a wish to be an adult, and then never went back home. Just
Oh my God, someone should make that movie.
so it's great to write him. His scenes are always the most fun, and we're working on season 2 right now, and Max is very down and out, and it's been really fun stuff to write.
I haven't read it, so I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Max as being down and out has been really, really fun, and
Oh God.
it's been exciting. And and going back to like just Tofte's performance as Max, I just have to say, and I brought this up in the last episode, but I want to say it now in front of Tofte, because I know he won't go back and listen to that episode. He's a busy guy, which is part of the thing. But Tofte's very, very busy in life. He has a lot of plates that he's spinning, and so he comes to the table readings very rarely. And so most of the time he will just record his lines, which is fine because it comes very naturally to him. And it comes so naturally that most of the time he is reading the script for the very first time while recording the lines. And there will be many times where he will say the line, and then after he says it, he'll laugh to himself and go, "That's pretty funny." And then that'll be the version that I use. I use the first take almost always because he's so freaking good.
Aw. Why, thank you.
Yeah.
Like I said, acting.
If you do it, you are.
Yeah, Max is so over the top that like if I had to do any kind of nuance or subtlety, I don't think I could do it. Like Jeff Gibson is such a, there's so much going on in that character. And you have to like Elliot too. Like you have to do all those, and oh my God, Simon, talk about and Naomi with Lorelai. They're all so much deeper than Max. My guy is easy to play. I'm just putting that out there. He's such a doofus.
Well, you play him well.
I think you make him look easy. I don't think it would be easy for anyone else. I think it's just easy for you.
Well, that's sweet. Thank you,
Scott. Can you twirl your mustache?
I can twirl my mustache. I have a mustache long enough now to twirl. And I'd always pictured, I wasn't sure if Max had a ponytail or not, but I kind of thought like he tried really hard to have a ponytail, but like some of it just didn't quite stay back. Mm-hmm. Like, so we had to grease it. Like, that's how I feel like I look like Max, except I think like Max should weigh like another 60 pounds.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that if we ever got the chance to make a live action Geek by Night, and I couldn't cast all of the people who are currently playing those characters for whatever reason,
far too expensive.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I would always say that I'd always said that Kevin Smith should play Max.
Yeah,
I could absolutely see that.
That's kind of like the vibe,
That'd
right?
be great.
Yeah.
He might do it too.
Everyone's bored right now. I bet you we could ask him tomorrow and he'd do it.
Right, if he could do it over Zoom, I'm sure he's good.
But then you lose your
I'm
job.
out of a job.
No.
Yeah, Mark, no.
The thing is, he wouldn't be as good as you.
Can Max have a twin brother?
Sax. His name is Sax.
And it's Kevin Smith? Wait a minute, I'm loving this idea. Hang on, I'm writing an email.
Oh, man.
You've been very successful with those emails.
That's true.
Well, that's true.
So I want to move on to music because since we have Tofte on here, we got to talk about this. And,
oh God, we got to hear from that guy again.
Like one of the things I was thinking about with Max is that like there's kind of this audible vocabulary to it that like as soon as you hear his song, it's like, oh, okay, this is a Max scene. Like you can kind of relax and like you talk about it being easy from your perspective, but it's easy from a listener's perspective too. That like we get to enjoy ourselves at this bit, especially during a heavy episode. But with all the different music themes and stuff like that, the first thing I really want to ask is, what do you listen to for inspiration? Do you listen to movie scores and TV scores? Do you just regular artists or what? So,
I mean, I'm a huge fan of movie music, but not to like the obsessive point that I clearly didn't go into it for a career. Like I teach middle school band. So like I'm not out scoring things on the regular, but like I love John Williams. I love Alan Silvestri. I love Danny Elfman. Like the stuff that those guys do.
John Dupre.
I love John Dupre. Let me tell you.
Speaking my language right now.
More on that later. But like any of these guys who are sort of melodic craftsmen, I'm a big fan of. Okay, so have you ever seen Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's his name is a composer for a TV show and literally just sits there hitting Jason Segel.
What's his name?
I almost said Seth Rogen, but that's not right.
No, the other one.
Same thing. What's the
same guy? Yeah.
Large, schlubby guy.
Yeah. his character is this composer for a TV show, and he just sits there and he hits like one piano note.
Yeah.
And like that resonates with me because I'm like, I hear a lot of that in movies nowadays.
Mood music.
TV, yeah, it's mood music, and I didn't want to make mood music. I wanted to make something you could play in, you could listen to for fun, or listen to in a concert hall, or throw in the car as you're driving, and you could if you buy the soundtracks on my website.
So no theremin.
No, I mean, no, not really.
I mean, you can make a melody out of that if you try hard enough.
No.
But like I look at the
couldn't.
Marvel movies now, and I for the life of me, I couldn't hum a tune from the Marvel films. It to me is just it's there's like that one theme and then nothing else. But
It's
like you
just the
listen to
Avengers
Batman
theme.
'89,
That's it.
you listen to
I can do Ant-Man right now.
I can't. And I've seen it like several times.
Ants.
And I'm not knocking it, but like there's a certain
Portals, man.
there's a certain wheelhouse that my brain lives in, and it's like the John Williams, John Dupre, Danny Elfman. The Princess Bride score was probably the one that I think of, and I don't know if I knew it at the time, but it like the instrumentation, all my instruments are digital instruments in the computer, and to my ear, it sounds like the Princess Bride score because that's all synthesized instruments and like one acoustic guitar. And I don't really think that I consciously drew inspiration from that, but the more I listen to this and the more I watch that, it kind of, there are some interesting parallels tonally, and not as stylistically as much just like structurally in the way that I do stuff. Like I would try to listen for story beats, pauses, suspenseful moments and hit that stuff. But a lot of times it was just like creating something that's catchy, but not so catchy that it pulls people away from the dialogue. One of my favorite pieces I did, I think it was, it's called Swift Jazz. And I think it's Simon or Lorelei. Someone was waking up and like making coffee in the morning or something. And it's like the Powers theme with Lorelei's theme, but just set to a really slow kind of jazzy, like vibing kind of thing. And it just was like fun. Lorelei's theme was a lot of fun. I was just ripping off Doctor Who. Max is Max is if you take your piano, like you take two hands on a piano and you just go boonk, bonk, boonk, bonk, and you don't know what you're doing. Like that's like a kid playing on a piano who's never seen a piano before is going to do this. That's kind of like what Max is. That's sort of what I was going for.
Do you experiment a lot like that? Like, if do you have a scene and you're like, do you iterate on it a lot, or do you?
A lot of what I would do is the first thing I'll do is, man, you're going back a couple years since I scored one of these things. I would listen to the scene, and if I, initially I'm trying to like hum a melody or think up a melodic idea in my head, and if nothing comes from that, I will literally just play the scene and just noodle on a piano and record it. And I'm not a piano player, so it's usually awful. And then out of that, I can sort of mark where moments happen. If I'm just sort of improvising, and I hear the dialogue ramping up, I can play louder or play faster. And that kind of gives me a structural framework to go back to. And that's when I can sort of go in and I can decide, am I, in a major key, a minor key? Is it fast? What's my instrumentation? Come up with melodic motifs and rhythmic figures, and things like that. So most of the time, that's what I'm doing is I'm looking at the scene, or I'm listening to the dialogue that Carelli sends me that's recorded, and I'm improvising to find structure and then going back and fleshing it out. Sometimes I write a concert piece. The Underdog theme goes with nothing. I literally had a melody and wrote the full piece with no scene behind it. I was just like, this is the Underdog's theme. This is the notes in their theme, and I'll figure out how to use it later. And I wrote an entire like John Williams introductory march on that theme and had to figure out where the hell to shoehorn it into an episode. It wasn't written specifically for a scene. It was just written.
Yeah. This is for both of the Scotts. Do you guys work together to determine, what music is going to be used for a certain scene? Or is it kind of like you record the dialogue and you sort of pass it?
I think it was like that at first. We would go back and forth a little bit, but I think at a certain point around I would say episode 5, which Ghost Story, which we'll be talking about next time. I think around there is when Tofte, I think just like we just sort of like synced up, and Tofte knows what I like and knows what I'm looking for. And I think that was the first one that he sent me that I gave like no notes on whatsoever.
I feel like it also happened a little bit out of necessity because, you know, as we started working on this, like you said, I'm busy, not like other people aren't, but like my attention wanes and drifts. I'm not, you know, quote, reliable with quote deadlines. So like at some point, like I don't know if Carelli noticed, I just started slipping more and more like previously used music into the episodes. Like the first 2 episodes is all brand new stuff. And then by like episode 3, it's like, oh, we used this one before, but maybe I'll use like the last 30 seconds of it. And then it was like more of those. And then as he kept going like, yeah, cool, great. I was like, sweet. And then I guess, yeah, around episode 5 is just sort of where like my mandate became like, I'm going to write 2 big pieces per episode or something like that, around that, like 2 big new ones per episode, and then use kind of different parts of the library from earlier episodes, which is, I think, pretty common in most like television shows or things like that.
Like so the Powers theme, you know, comes up a lot.
And Max's theme, Lorelai's theme. Yeah, all that stuff.
And then I also had the ability, I could shift tempos on those and like sort of rearrange them and things like that. But the 5th episode, I think, is where the library of music was big enough that it didn't have to be a conversation every single episode about what kind of music we wanted, because we had stock music and it could be placed pretty easily because they were all character themes for the most part.
Also, one thing that he's not mentioning is that most of this show was scored while he was on lunch break at his school in between classes. He would often be like, I'm on lunch break. Let me see how much I can get done. And then he'd be like, all right, here you go. And he'd send it to me. I'm like, all right, cool.
And then not for nothing, I was also doing the final mix of every show also. So like once all the sound effects and the music and the dialogue are in there, I'm like EQing everyone's voices to make sure, like we're in 10 different houses with 30 different microphones. Like nobody sounds the same. So I'm like trying to get everyone's tonality to match and the levels and balancing everything. So I'm doing all of that stuff while scoring on my lunch break from teaching and playing in a band and writing an album.
Sound is hard.
Yeah, it's fun, but I learned a lot doing this from a production standpoint and from a compositional standpoint, to the point where, you know, I did start writing all these themes for podcasts the exact same way that I do for Geek by Night. And I'm currently
that one for that thing that we're doing. How quickly did you whip out that first one, the first couple of ones? Like that was
so I'm actually doing
like in 4 or 5 hours, right?
Yeah. Chris and I are doing a thing now for our podcast. And it requires some original music, and it's the first scoring I've done since Geek by Night. And that muscle is there, and it feels so much stronger because of all the work I did on Geek by Night. Geek by Night was awesome, and I miss it.
I'm really excited for what you come up with in season 2.
Yeah, give me no deadlines, and I will do my best.
No. I've learned a long time ago. I have to give you deadlines. It's just that I give you deadlines earlier than I actually want them to be done.
It's a fake deadline.
Yeah, it's a fake deadline. Yeah, I have to give you like a dead drop deadline.
Don't tell him that. That's like telling somebody they're getting the placebo.
That's the opposite of Scotty in Star Trek. He's like, yeah, I'll tell him it's going to take 10 days. It's only going to take me 3. That's how you become
undersell,
a miracle.
over delivery. Yep.
I'm going to tell him I need it in 2 weeks, but really I don't need it for a couple months. It's fine.
Yeah, that's probably the best.
And it got plugged earlier, but I'm going to plug it again. ScottTofte.com. The 2 volumes of the Geek by Night soundtrack are really great to listen to.
They're so good.
There's like 45 songs between the 2.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's scotttofte.bandcamp.com if you want to go straight to the music. Tofte is my last name.
And if I want a copy of each soundtrack on vinyl, how much is that going to set me back?
So, listen, I was literally thinking about that today. Vinyl's expensive.
It really is.
But like when I put these things up for sale, I think 2 people bought it. I would love people to like just go get this music. I think it's even up there. I think it's $5 for each one or something.
$10 for both volumes.
And it's like 40 songs, and it's well over an hour and a half of music. Granted, they're all super short songs, but like I actually at one point started arranging the underdog theme for a full orchestra with the hopes of getting enough players to actually perform it live and record it.
That's so cool.
It hasn't happened yet.
I'm just going to say I play piano, guitar, and clarinet. So
I play violin. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's the other thing too is that he designed the albums to be listened to as albums. So it's not like he just put them all on there in order of how they arrived in the show. He put them on there he put them on in an order that he felt like worked as an album.
I forgot about that.
Well, because you get like the Lorelei's ghosts and then the mostly ghostlies all together. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Like just listening to them in order.
Yeah.
I mean, I also made an effort. I mean, I don't remember making an album out of it as far as, but if Scott says I did, then I did. I also cut out a lot of stuff because there's a lot of sort of variations on these that just sort of seemed like we don't need to have the 10-second version of Lorelei's really slow, sad theme, so we'll just leave that out. And then other ones I combined together. One of my favorites, by the way, Mark, is the 8-bit Ire theme, the video game Ire theme that I did.
God. When I heard that, I was like, no.
I only did because I found that synthesizer online like the day I was like, I want to do something different. I was like, oh my God, they have a Nintendo synthesizer. I'm using it.
It's so good because this is not about me, I know, but I just want to, I relate to you a lot because I've been playing piano since I was like 8 and did the music track, and I'm sure broke my dad's heart when I told him I wanted to be an actor. But I also did a radio play of my own a few years back, and my best friend Austin Lee Matthews, I had him do the music for that, and it's a similar process as what you guys do here, except I also would occasionally write music, and it would be one of those things where it was like, this is not for any particular scene, I'm just struck with this idea, you know, related to this project. And so we had this large repertoire of music built up, and some of it was written by me, but like 95% of it was written by Austin. And he was like, one day he was like, can I just start releasing the music? And I was like, I mean, yeah, if you think people want to listen to it. And he's like, yeah. So like he constructed all these albums. And so it's a very similar process where it's like, you know, as a creator, getting a musician who's excited about the project that you're working on is so refreshing, because it just means you can kind of just, once you're both kind of on that same wavelength, you just go, here, have fun, go create.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It you know, this project let me put composer in my Twitter bio, so that's super important.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
not too many people get to do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
anybody
John
could do
Dupre,
it if they
that's
wanted
about
to.
it. John Dupre, who composed the music for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and also like Spam-A-Lot and stuff.
Yeah,
it's okay. He's
Fish
a buddy
called
of mine.
Wanda.
So I want to end things on a really positive note here. This episode has a lot to do with like toxic communities and fandoms and stuff like that. And we did this on the last episode when talking about like the Liberty and Justice sagas. But since we have some new guests here, I want to ask again, what is an internet story that you experienced that's particularly hopeful or wholesome or positive that we can kind of balance out some of the vitriol that we discussed and listened to with this episode? Or maybe like a really great fandom that you
that I can
participate in.
Oh, okay. So I don't need to do John Krasinski's Some Good News. I can just talk about what makes me happy. All right. Yeah.
There's a video, and I think it's maybe about a year and a half old now. But there's a video of a VR chat where a streamer was just streaming and hopped into VR chat, and he encountered this kid. And I only remember the kid's name was Joey. He was like 5 years old, and he was so excited to teach people how to play this game that the streamer just tagged along with him. So they played for like 3 hours, and it is one of the most heartwarming videos on the internet. There's like a highlight video of it. I wish I could remember specifically what it was called, but it was like Joey in VR chat or something. He had like this little cat avatar, and he's like, okay, so what you want to do is you want to take the bomb and then you throw it over the fence. And like, it's just, he's so excited about it. And it is just the complete and pure wonder of a child having fun in a creative environment and being excited about teaching other people how to do that. And apparently this kid got like a ton of fan letters after that video went up. His parents were like super grateful, but that was one of those things where it was like, the internet can do two things with this video. They can either embrace it and celebrate it, or absolutely tarnish this child's life. And I'm really happy they embraced it and celebrated it, because it's so easy especially for kids on the internet, to become victims to teasing. And it was just so heartwarming to see how many people were just like, "Oh, Joey's awesome. You're my hero, Joey." And like, he's just, it's very, very refreshing.
Who's next?
Chris or Tofte?
I'll go. Unless Chris wants to go. Chris, you want to go?
I'm still thinking.
I'll go. I'm going to go a little different route. I mean, you're asking me to remember something I saw on the internet, which you don't know about my memory. It's awful, so I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is the internet has brought me some pretty awesome stuff, and a lot of it started via Geek By Night. So via Geek By Night, I get to know Carelli, who now I've not only composed and acted for, but have written songs for, have done, artwork for. I got to know Chris and Rachel from the show, and Ray from the show. And, Chris and Rachel and I now have another podcast that is a huge part of my online presence, which has led me to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Minute, by the way.
You took my answer.
Which has led me to actual real life friends that I've met. Our buddy Ralph, Rachel's boyfriend Adam, who's now a good buddy of ours, and all the cool stuff that we've gotten to do because of this silly little thing with the internet, with a bunch of people that, for the most part, I've never met in real life. I've never met Carelli. Mark, this is the first time I've seen your face.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
We were on a show together. It was super cool. Like, Chris and I have hung out once.
One time.
But like, it's this awesome thing.
I got really drunk.
Yes, you did. And it's on audio forever for people to listen to. But yeah, man, it's brought me into this world of podcasting and the Ninja Turtles fandom specifically, which I've learned is this super awesome, at least the people that listen to our show, incredibly positive. Yeah. Our show has been a hiatus for almost a year, and people are still like posting stuff to the Facebook group, like checking in on people. Awesome. Like, I mentioned I'm a teacher, and one of the girls in the Facebook group was like, "Here's some resources that you might be interested in. My daughter or whatever is a teacher." And I was like, "That's awesome." So internet does some good sometimes.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Chris, I'm sorry if I stole your answer.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, you did. You did steal my answer. And the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles online fandom is surprisingly positive. I'm sure there's dark corners of it somewhere that hate us, but we haven't found them. So hooray!
There's even the guy who wrote a review of us. I don't want to make this about us, but I'm going to. There's a guy who wrote a review of us about like, "Oh, the show is too political," blah 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 blah, and like we railed on him in an episode. We're like, it's our show. Like we made like a joke like twice. Like, get over it. And then like a week later, he like amended his thing. He's like, "I'm sorry. It's actually, I have a lot of fun. This is a good show." Like, that's awesome. Even the troll was like, I was out of line. I'm sorry.
Very Canadian. I'm sorry about that review.
Sorry.
I'm going to revise that back up from a 1 star to a 4. Okay.
All right.
I guess, apart from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there's this really adorable picture of a baby making pizza. If you haven't seen that one yet, seek it out.
Oh, I did see that.
It's so cute. It's so sweet. I want to make my kid make pizza now.
Scott, I think this would be a really good opportunity to do a 15-minute mini quarantine live action Geek by Night episode. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong, but
no one's going to expect it to be high quality.
We're also I think at some point we'll probably do, we'll do, that's not a bad idea.
If SNL can do it, we can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Community's read through just came out today, and apparently it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It would be really fun to read, maybe rewrite and read Chris's old episodes with the current cast as a table read.
If we can find it, I don't know if it's still. I think it might be.
I think I might have it on an external drive somewhere.
Piece it back together from memory. It'll be awesome.
It might be in my I think it's in my Gmail archive.
Just give them the bullet points and let everybody ad-lib it.
Oh,
it was oddly complicated.
Oh,
Cool.
man.
I
am planning on releasing re-releasing the original show on Patreon. So maybe we could do like a live read of all the episodes we never recorded of the old show, because then
just table read it.
It's very widely requested.
No extra work. I like that. I'm in the middle of writing a season 2. I like the no work thing. I like that.
I like this plan. It's a good plan.
Okay. All right.
Glad to be a part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
This is how we do things on Geek by Night. We just pitch ideas and hope that Scott freaks out and actually does them.
Yeah.
Like, there's no.
You just
Scott,
take a handful of darts.
No, okay.
I bet I could even get our for those of you who don't know, I don't know if anyone doesn't know this at this point, but our artist, the guy who drew like our season 1 artwork and stuff, he was Elliot in the original show.
Oh, really?
He played Elliot in the original show, and he just didn't have time to do it this time, which is why we auditioned people. And
can Elliot have a twin brother?
Smelly.
All right, stop pitching that. Tofte. So the
just need to have a twin episode.
So yeah, we could probably even get Kevin to come back and play Elliot in those live reads, like just to,
Oh, Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, Kevin Ziegler, but yeah. Anyway, all right.
This has gone off the rails.
That's interesting. Okay.
Does anybody have any last thoughts or bookends on Under the Bridge to add? Talked about a lot.
I used to know how to play that song.
I'm really proud of this episode. Honestly, though, like I've been proud of everything up to this point, but I think this was the first episode that I was like, okay, this is what the new show is. Like this is the one. Then going forward from this, I feel like every episode after this gets progressively better, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So I'm really proud of this one as like. This was the one where we sort of planted our flag and said, like, this is what we're trying to do with this show. This is what we're trying to talk about. This is the kind of stuff we're trying to tackle. And so I'm really, really proud of this episode. And then I think we take it a step further each episode. So I'm really happy with this one. I love this episode.
I'm going to have to go back and listen to all of these again because, like I said, my memory is terrible, and now it's like listening to it for the first time. It's going to be great.
See,
especially knowing what happens later in the season. It's really fun.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't necessarily remember all the moments, but I remember how I felt. And I remember very specifically when this episode came out. Just it stands out even just as an ensemble piece in the world of radio plays. And I'm not just saying this because I want Scott to use me more. But like significantly, I was very impressed when I heard this episode and started. I will admit to having not fully followed the production of the show prior to this episode. Mm-hmm. I think probably legitimate reason being that I didn't know about it until I was auditioning for it. But it was there's this thing in the voice actor world where you do a lot of auditions and then you book something and you're like, cool, I have no idea what this is about, but I have no time to look into it, so I'm just going to wait for the script. And that was kind of what this was.
So I've been doing it right.
Huh?
I said, so I've been doing it right.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the utmost professional, Tofte.
But after hearing this episode, I really did go back and listen to the whole show because it was like, man, these guys are. This is amazing. Like it's really hard to write something especially with this many characters and make you care about all of them.
Yeah, that like actually affects you.
Yeah, and so I was extremely impressed, and it made me go back and listen to everything. So I'm really excited about what season 2 has to hold.
Well, thanks, Mark. I'm excited to share it with everybody.
This was
I'm excited to be late in delivering my parts.
I'll be on time. I promise.
Hey, Carelli, can I record my lines as I'm writing the music and doing the export? Can I just do that? Is that fine?
It's going to be a concept album, all right?
Listen, the only time I had to record this week was when I was in the bathroom, so I hope the echo is not going to be a problem.
Right.
No, Tofte, that's the one thing Tofte would never do.
I actually wrote in a scene where I can use this toilet flush sound effect because I recorded it live, so...
Yeah, I will say that was like my one thing was just being super, again, sorry if we're talking about toilets, but super anal about recording quality.
No, I feel that. I feel that a lot.
Yeah.
Well done.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's fun. I missed the show. I'm excited to be doing season 2. I wish we were doing seasons 3 and 4 and 5, but none of us have that kind of time.
No.
I mean, look, if it takes us 50 years, I'll do it as long as it doesn't, cause
Where do you-
Scott to pull his hair out and go bald.
Where do you think Geek by Night is going to be in another 15 years, Corelli?
Hopefully a TV show.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I'm done with all of this, the first thing I'm doing is writing a pilot. So
All right.
we'll
What
see.
can I do and how can I help? And I'll end it on that. That's my final contribution. Whatever you need, I'll do it.
All right, fair enough.
And then 15
Even if I don't
years-
know how to do it yet.
15
I'll-
years after that, I want it on like a gold record being shot into space. So
I
Just
mean,
letting
that's
you
the
know where
ultimate
my
dream for all
timeline
things,
is.
right? Yeah, absolutely. All right, 30
All right, guys.
years.
clock's ticking.
I think that's all we have.
We'll get there.
All we have time for. But thank you again to our guests, Scott Carelli, Chris O'Connor, Scott Tofte, Mark Allen Jr., for joining me today. And thank you to all of you, the fans, the underdogs, for listening today. If you'd like to support the show, please join the Dueling Genre Patreon at duelinggenre.com/support. You can also tell your friends, families, and followers to subscribe to Geek by Night on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. So thanks for going beyond Geek by Night with us. See you next time.